All right, what's up people? Today we are here on some more Destiny 2. I have a interesting build for you guys to maybe test out, maybe see for yourselves, see if you want to give it a try. We are using the Thorn exotic hand cannon with necrotic grip, the exotic warlock gauntlets on the prismatic subclass. And what I'm going to call this build is the toxic kaleidoscope. Yeah, I know. Good name, great name. Honestly, probably the best name that's ever been introduced ever or something. But basically the idea of this build is to perpetuate transcendence for yourself. Going over the simplistics of the build, Thorn is a kinetic weapon that is able to spread poison because of necrotic grips. And kinetic weapons will charge your both dark and light versions of transcendence. You need to charge light and dark, dealing dark damage or dealing light damage. But if you use a kinetic weapon, it charges both. And then you also have this facet of grace, which will grant bonus transcendence energy when you defeat targets with kinetic weapons. So the whole idea of this build is to use Thorn plus necrotic grip in order to charge up transcendence as much as possible, so you could basically always be transcendent. And I think this build is a really good build specifically for things with a lot of enemies. So the new Echoes mission, the Breach executable, Onslaught, any sort of strike content, probably it'll maybe be good in dungeons. I wouldn't recommend this for boss damage because this isn't like a huge boss damage type of build. This is more just like Omega ad clear, where Thorn will be spreading poison to literally everything. On Transcendent Warlock, you can have Lightning Surge plus the Strand melee, so you can Lightning Surge, which will jolt and spread poison because it's counted as a melee from Necrotic Grip. So it's very good at ad clear, but it's not very good at boss damage. But you don't need boss damage. Not everything has a boss in it. So I was recommended this build from a person in my comment section. So if you guys ever want me to either review a build or take a look at a build, just leave it in my comment section below. It could be on Warlock, Hunter, Titan, anything. And yeah, let's go into a more in-depth dive into this build. I'll have some gameplay in the background so you guys can see it. So first up, let's talk about the fragments on the prismatic subclass. Oh, and we're rocking the Song of Flame super because it's just a very good super. Good for ad clear, good for damage, just good. So the fragments. Of course, we have Facet of Grace, makes it so kinetic weapons grant bonus transcendence energy. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus transcendence energy. This is good with Thorn because you want to be transcendent as much as possible. Obviously, that's the whole point of this build. You want to always be able to perpetuate your transcendence. So this is probably the most important fragment to this build. Next up, we have Facet of Hope, which allows us to gain our class ability energy faster whenever we have an elemental buff. This is just good because we're using Lightning Surge. Whenever we use the Lightning Surge and get a kill, we'll become amplified. And then in the artifact, we have a artifact mod called Radiant Orbs, which makes it so while your solar or prismatic subclass is equipped, picking up an orb of power makes you radiant. So that is just, it will always be radiant and amplified. So Facet of Hope will always be able to regenerate our class ability. Next up, we have Facet of Courage. This one could be subbed out with literally any other facet because this is just extra. Like, we already have a lot of fragment slots, so you could really sub this out with anything. But Facet of Courage makes it so your arc, solar, and void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuff. The strategy I found that really works is because we're using the Strand melee, and the Strand melee will unravel a target, you can use your Strand melee on a boss and then pop your super so your solar abilities do more damage. But like I said, this could be subbed out with literally anything. You don't need this one specifically. Next up, we have Facet of Blessing. This is just really good for healing. So this makes it so melee final blows start health regeneration, while transcendent melee final blows start health regeneration for you and nearby allies. This is always good. You always want to have some type of sustain in your build because sustain will, obviously keep you alive. You'll be able to become transcendence again, and it'll just help you live, especially since this build is very close up. This build is very personal. So you want to be using Lightning Surge to get close to your enemies, and being able to regenerate your health and regenerate your allies' health is always helpful. Next up, we got Facet of Purpose, which makes it so picking up an overshield or picking up a overpower grants either amplified restoration, frost armor, or woven mail, or overshield based on the type of super. Because we're on a solar super, we get restoration. So that means when we get a kill with our arc subclass or with our arc melee, we'll become amplified, and then when we pick up an orb, we'll become radiant and we'll get restoration. So we'll have 3 subclass buffs, all for doing very simple tasks. Next up, we have Facet of Sacrifice. While You have an arc, solar or void buff. Ability final blows grants darkness transcendence energy. This one is also a really good one because we have a vortex grenade, we have a void grenade, and we're using our lightning surge, which means whenever we do have a subclass buff, using our normal abilities will also grant darkness transcendence energy. So you don't even need to run a darkness weapon. Like, you don't need to run a strand weapon, you don't need to run a stasis weapon. You could run just whatever you want and you'll still always be able to become transcendent. So this build will always be good for transcendence. You'll always be able to become transcendent. And the best part about it is necrotic grip and thorn can be substituted out. I'm using necrotic grip and thorn because that's what I was recommended, and when I gave it a try, it was also really good. But any kinetic weapon could be used. If you wanted to, you could use Kvastov and a different exotic, like chromatic fire. Kvastov plus chromatic fire will allow you to ricochet bullets that will also explode targets, and I think that would also be a very good build for this. So you can always be transcended, you can always be exploding targets with Kvastov, but thorn is also good because you can spread poison and your melee will also spread poison. This is a very, very strong build that will basically carry you through 90% of content. Like I said, it doesn't have a lot of boss damage potential, but other than that, you can become transcendent all the time. You'll always have your melee up, you'll always be spreading poison, and you will always be having subclass buffs because of the artifact and the faceted purpose. So yeah, the rest of the video is just some gameplay I used with the buff. Like I said before, if you guys have any buffs you want me to check out, any buffs you want me to look at, just leave them in the comments below. I'll take a look at them. And if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.